Today I'm with Stephen Sashen, the CEO and co-founder of Feel the World, Inc., which is the manufacturer of Xero shoes. Welcome, Stephen.
Correct. Thank you. Good to be here. Well, actually, I'm here. Good to be part of this.
Yes, I'm good to be part of it as well. Hey, I read on your website that you got the inspiration for Xero shoes from reading Born to Run by Chris McDougall, the book Born to Run. That's right?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. There were sort of some things that coalesced. One was I'd just gotten back into sprinting after a 30-year break and was just getting injured all the time, and someone suggested that maybe I try running barefoot as a cure for all my injuries. And Born to Run was just barely starting to get some notoriety in the running community, and so I started looking into barefoot things, and someone handed me a copy of the book, and it all came together. And I'd known about the Tarahumara Indians who had run the Leadville 100 ultramarathon in sandals, basically just a piece of tire strapped to their feet. So I was hip to the whole idea, but it all really came together right around that same time. This is summer of 2009, so 4 years ago.
That initial spark of creativity, can you explain that? Explain that to me. Just the juice that comes from that.
Well, I don't know if it's creativity or desperation or frustration. It was a combination of all those things. It was like I knew that being barefoot changed my life. I mean, there's no question about that. I went from being injured all the time and having crazy flat feet to having feet that actually have arches and not being injured, and it really changed my running and my life. So I love this idea of being more barefoot more of the time. Not an appropriate thing in certain places and in certain circumstances. So again, knowing about this whole idea of sandals, I started looking into that some more, and I found a couple of options that were crazily just overpriced and silly and not done well and not treated seriously. And so I put together some ideas of my own about how I wanted to make sandals, found some material by accident. I called a rubber distributor. He sent me some stuff. Months later, he said, I can't believe I ever sent you anything because we only work with like shoe stores and real accounts. Well, I don't know why I did it, but so be it. And then I made shoes for myself and the local barefoot runners. Actually, the first pair I made was for my wife, who sort of patted me on the head. It's like, gee, thanks, honey. And didn't know why. And then I charged just enough money so that if I sold them all, I could buy some more materials, which I did. So basically, I made what I had, took that money, reinvested, made twice as much, reinvested, made twice as much. And the last pair that I made out of all the material that I bought was for a guy who was a local barefoot running coach who said, you should treat this like a business. I went, I don't think so. And he said, well, I've got a book coming out on barefoot running. If you had a website, I'd put you in the book. So I rushed home and pitched this idea to my wife, who told me it was a really stupid idea and we wouldn't make any money. It was a distraction from some other things we were doing, and I told her she was totally right. And when she went to bed, I built a website. So, and what kept her calm, well, didn't keep her calm, what calmed her down the next morning after I showed her that I'd built the site, one of the businesses we were doing at that time was a search engine marketing business. And I said, look, I just took a quick look, and I realized that in the barefoot running space, all the people who have good ranking are there by accident. So this would be a good case study for us. I think I can own this market in 3 months by doing the things that we're doing for our clients. And that's exactly what happened. But the joke is, by that time, 3 months later, it was clear that this was going to be our business, not our consulting business.
So if you had to describe the benefits of Xero shoes in a tweet.
Okay. All right.
How would you put it?
Okay, this is not necessarily 140 characters, but remember how much fun you had in the summer barefoot as a kid. You can have that all the time now.
Excellent. And I noticed from the television program that obviously you were on Shark Tank. That's how we met each other, actually through Twitter. One of the things I noticed that you were talking about the health benefits of the product.
Correct. Well, look, you gave me a tweet, so all I could do is that one thing. Here's another tweet. So all the fun and benefits of being barefoot, plus a layer of protection and your own personal style. That's my second tweet. Thank you. I'm the first one to admit that the science is not totally in on the whole barefoot thing. There's still a lot of research going on. There's a lot of research that is very suggestive, and there's just a lot of clear thinking that's very suggestive about the benefits of barefoot. The simplest thing I can say is, use it or lose it. This is not something that's news. Your feet have, the only place in your body that has more nerve endings than your feet is your fingers and your mouth. That's not an accident. If you don't use your feet, both the nerves to get sensations and all the muscles and ligaments and tendons, part of your brain just shuts off. I'll do a quick tangent. There's some researchers who think that elderly people have problems with balance, not because of some brain problem or some inner ear issue, but because for years and years their feet have essentially been in a cast where they don't use them, and their brain says, oh, you don't need those things at the end of your leg? Nah, don't worry about it. So, interesting study. They took some magic vibrating insoles and put them in the shoes of some elderly people and then helped them regain their balance. I did a big blog post saying, this is, just hand waving. You don't need magic vibrating insoles. Take off your damn shoes and go for a walk outside. And this guy who was 85 years old sent me an email saying, I found your blog post and I decided to put it to the test, and it's been a week and I don't have to use my walker anymore. So the idea that if you put your foot in something that's essentially a cast, a shoe, you don't get to use it versus being barefoot where you actually get to use things naturally. And we have very bad memories here. People forget that before the advent of the heavily padded motion controlled running shoe, every shoe was basically minimalist. Every shoe was much closer to barefoot. We just forget that. So there's a long history of minimalist things that let you use your feet more that is just gone for the last 2 generations.
Ah, okay. I love it. Love it. And I love the fact that once you get in a category, you really have to zoom in and own everything about it in order to make sure that people understand the benefits.
Well, I think that's part of it, but also for me, I'm just the kind of guy who likes to know how things work, and I like one of my hobbies, if you will, is pulling the rug out from underneath bad thinking. And so the entire shoe business is built on bad thinking. There's no evidence that shows that a padded motion control shoe is in any way good for you. Pardon me one sec, let's turn that off. And they've had ample time to prove it, but there is no evidence. When I see the shoe companies controlling the conversation and the way that consumers think by just putting out a press release that is clearly propaganda but gets reported as news, the part of me that likes the truth finds that, what's a good word, repulsive. And so now that I'm in it's just a confluence of factors. I'm in the industry now, so I get to have these conversations. But look, when Nike spends millions of dollars to sponsor athletes, they go to the Olympics wearing Nike clothes, and then suddenly it's news that all these athletes are wearing Nike clothes. I just go, wow, I wish I had that kind of a marketing engine. I mean, I have nothing but envy on the one hand. On the other hand, it's like, seriously? And it's fascinating. There are a number of studies coming out lately that are starting to really put some chinks in the armor of the story that the running shoe companies have been telling for years. And I just like that kind of thing where you get to pull the curtain back and see who's really controlling Oz.
Okay, so from your history, this looks to be like your 3rd career, right? It seems like you kind of was your first living, or maybe more. Least. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, but you started off in real estate and became very successful at it.
Oh, you're already like on number 4. So okay. my first career, if we're really going to do it, my first career was when I was a kid, and I was a professional entertainer. So I did magic and comedy, and then I went into. I know I'm actually doing these not sequentially. I went into entertainment like for real. I was a professional stand-up comic and a professional actor. I got a master's degree in screenwriting and film from Columbia University. So I created the industry standard word processing software for film and television writers. I got really good at internet marketing as a result of starting that business when the internet was just beginning. I have a vivid memory of sitting in my 400 square foot apartment in New York with my best friend, still my best friend, bemoaning that we didn't have enough money, $70, to buy a domain name for something that we wanted, and thinking it was silly that somebody would spend $70 on business.com. I mean, that's just a generic word. So we were there at the beginning of that. Then I had the software company, did some real estate investing between that, and actually in between, when I got really good at internet marketing, someone had given me a network marketing health product to try. I really liked the product; it really worked. I saw no one was really doing anything with that online. I started doing that and created marketing systems that were very successful. I did some real estate investing that allowed my wife and I to retire for about 9 years till the real estate universe changed. Internet marketing consultant, television show host, shoe guy, meditation teacher, and I know I'm leaving a few out. When people say to me, "What do you do?" I'm so thrilled that I've got this job now, because now it's a short answer instead of when we were retired, and it would have to be like that whole history, which I find not interesting.
Okay, so do me a favor. Tell me of all the things that you've done in your history, how have they sort of informed and helped you in this transition to all of a sudden you're in the apparel industry?
Yeah, in a way, it's all the same thing underneath every one of them, which is, like I said, I like to know how things work without the extraneous stuff. And I like to try to find the fastest way to get from here to there, which is another sort of irony, if you will, because as a runner, I'm a sprinter. I run the 100 meters, and indoors I run the 50 and the 60. I go from here to here really fast. I don't even go around the track. I don't know what the other side of the track looks like. So that's my thing, is how do I get from here to here as quickly and efficiently as possible without extraneous stuff? And that's been the underlying thing for everything. It's just now all those ancillary, the ways that applied in different places have all sort of come together in this. This is really, in many ways, the culmination of everything I've done.
And so it would be safe to say then that some of those things were very successful and some of them weren't successful at all.
Some were very successful, some were medium. I've been very lucky. I haven't had anything where, it tanked or I went bankrupt or anything like that. But there were a few things along the way that were kind of diversions. There's really been like 3 or 4 that were kind of main things that really had some legs underneath them and some the ability to move forward. This one, this has the ability to be the biggest of everything that I've done so far, and that's what keeps me up at night, is how do I help this realize its potential and do that in the best way, because there's some big possibilities here.
Okay, great. Let's talk about your Shark Tank experience. All right.
Okay.
We connected via Twitter.
I gotta do that.
There you go. Okay. And as you'll find out, my wife and I are big fans of the show. We watch it all the time. I wrote a blog about it. I live tweet about it. It's just because, again, being a student of business. Overall, how would you rate your experience?
Oh, through the roof. The show has totally changed our lives in a number of ways. Just applying to be on the show brought a level of focus and attention to what we were doing that we didn't have before. It really lit a fire under us. In fact, I've been coaching a guy who was possibly going to be on the show, and they actually just cut him for a number of reasons. And he said, "I'm not worried. I mean, all the preparation told me what I needed to do to take my business to the next level." So that it did the same thing for us. It allowed us to talk to people that we otherwise would not have the ability to get in front of. Some VCs who deal with companies that are 10 times our size were on the phone with us, helping us out, giving us information and advice. I mean, so it really opened a lot of doors and really focused us a lot. Actually, taping the show was, I don't talk about this very often, it just occurred to me personally, really profound. To have this crazy shared experience with my wife was something I'm forever indebted to the show for. I mean, it really brought us much closer because we had to work so hard and work together. And when we got together, we were basically retired for the first part of our relationship. So this is the first time that we know each other as working people, let alone working together people. And that was it was just an incredible experience to go through that with Lena. I'm really grateful. And then the effect of the show is huge. Both the revenue that it generated, because, oh gosh, after the show aired, we did about 3 months worth of sales in the next week. And that's now happened twice. And then the people that we've become exposed to, who either found us or where we found each other, or I've been at trade shows where people walk up to me, especially if I'm wearing one of these, and they'll go, "Oh, you're that guy," and people who I would never get a chance to meet will come up and say hi to me, and a number of them have turned into integral parts of our business. So And for the people who've seen the show, I'll do a spoiler alert. We walked away from a $400,000 offer, and from the time since the show aired, we've made more than that without having to give up any equity in our company. So it's been just tremendous.
Okay, let's break it down a little bit. How much time did you guys invest in preparing for that show? Because it sounds like it was extensive.
Ooh, my face. It really, well, so I applied for the show in March or so of 2012. Is that right? Last year? Yeah, 2012. And sent an email. Once they announced the casting was open, I sent an email that just said, here's what we're doing, here's why we think we'd be on the show, or why we think we'd be good on the show, and why we need to be on the show. They responded a few weeks later, and we started going through the whole auditioning process and getting through it. So, and then we ended up taping in like July, August, I don't remember specific dates. That whole period of time, from basically when they called us back in mid-May till when we taped, was just completely 100% dealing with the show. Preparing our business, preparing our financials, figuring out what we wanted to ask and offer, rehearsing, I mean, everything. And I mean, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. It was a lot of time. In fact, go ahead.
Did they send you some kind of a kit to help prepare you?
No. What we did is, I mean, we've been huge fans of the show. So we've been already watching the show, and in my spare time, I've already been watching YouTube clips from Dragon's Den, from the UK version and the Canadian version as well. So we've been doing our own research, but then it just amped up. So we really started watching the shows more carefully. Our hobby already on Friday night was to watch the show on our DVR, hit pause, and pretend to be, you know, either side of the equation, and say whether we thought it was a good answer, coming up with a better question. You know, we just pretended to be both sharks and entrepreneurs. That's Friday night. But this just amplified it. We talked to people who've been on the show. We talked to people who almost were on the show but didn't make it on the show. We just did everything we could to make it so that when we got there, we could own it as much as possible. I mean, we could just do the best job we could. That was our hope.
And you looked very comfortable on the show. Now it makes sense knowing your background. How did your wife handle?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I don't have a thing about human beings. I don't get intimidated by people or whatever. And so I enjoy just like kind of going, oh, you just did that? All right, now let's see. So that's fun for me. Lena was really nervous until we got there. She fell asleep in the green room before we went on, which really surprised her. But she was kind of nervous. And once we got started, it was just what we do. We know our business, we talk about our business, we share our business. And she was awesome. I mean, she just nailed it. So she was a little worried about how it was going to happen going in, but man, she was a pro.
Let's talk a little bit about before you recorded.
Okay.
I'd like to understand the basic dialogue going on between you and your wife prior to recording that session, the sort of daydreaming, or what happens if, you know, what kind of thoughts were running through your heads and dialogue that you were having with each other?
Well, for the 2 weeks prior to actually taping, I think the only thing we said to each other was that first 90 seconds that was our pitch. It got cut down, but we just, I mean, literally, we would just do it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for hours at a time, because we just wanted to make sure that the moment we said, "Hi, Sharks," it was on autopilot for the next 90 seconds. That was our real goal, and we really worked to get that both as tight as possible, but also leave things out so that we could bring them up in the conversation, and
sure.
And so that was a big part of it. Beyond that, boy, it's a good question. By and large, you know, we had to prepare for things being really good. Because if they are, you want to be ready for it, and so that took a lot of financial planning, and it took a lot of logistical planning. But we had known enough people, and we had done enough research that we saw that some people like hit it out of the park and made tons and tons of sales and had a lot happen, and some people not so much. So we mostly went in our conversation was mostly, you know, this could be really good, or maybe not. We knew that, in fact, so I spent a lot of years as a professional actor, and the attitude that I developed as a result of that is, I don't really believe anything is real until the check clears, and maybe not even until 30 days after that. So until we taped the show and the show aired, it wasn't really real. And so I don't do a lot of hypothecating about how it could be. I mostly just try to prepare for what we need to do, and that's a lot of what we did. We knew that some people taped the show and they didn't air, so we knew it was possible that that could happen to us. We had friends who were supposed to tape the show, and the night before they were going to fly out, were told they weren't needed. So all we did was everything we could think of to be ready to be on, and to have the back end ready for if we aired, and that went well. But we really just didn't have a clue what was gonna happen. We had no idea. We had our fingers crossed, but it could go either way. Actually, I take it back. There's one other thing. Sorry, wait. There's one other part that I left out. We read the autobiographies of every one of the sharks, and we discussed those quite extensively. We felt like we had a good handle on who they were, and we did a lot of planning about who we might want to work with, who we might not want to work with, who we might want to work with together. And again, we did a lot about figuring out our ask and our offer and how that would relate to everyone. That was actually a huge part of what we did, is getting really clear about how people valued our company, and then apply that to the Shark Tank math. Because, you know, you can't offer too small a percentage or they don't like you. You don't want to offer too much or there's nowhere for them to go other than controlling interest. You can't ask for too much money because they might not have it. And you can't ask for too little because it doesn't look like you know what you're doing. So there's a bunch of wacky math that happens that isn't like any other kind of pitch or any other kind of offer or fundraising you would ever do. And so we spent, oh my gosh, hours and hours and hours just working on that until we felt really, really comfortable, like completely unequivocally comfortable, saying, here's what we're offering, here's what we're asking, here's why.
So at the time you had come to the valuation of, you were looking for $400,000 for 8% of your company. And
correct.
So what were the metrics in general that brought you to arrive at that valuation?
Sure. So for people who don't want to do the math, that's a $5 million valuation. And there are a couple of things. One is we're a rapidly growing company in a rapidly growing niche. We're projecting 1.2 in sales, so it's really only about 4 times sales, which is pretty conservative, frankly, for a rapidly growing company. Or not conservative, but totally not out of the realm of reasonability, especially rapidly growing.
4 times? It's really a little more than 4 times revenue?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also, we spoke to a lot of bankers and VCs and also people in the footwear industry who buy companies. And we got a number of valuations for them, some as low as $3 million and some as high as 8 to 10. And the difference had to do with what the business model of that entity was. If they were just buying brands that they weren't planning on growing, that was the low end. If they were companies that were focused on growth, that was the high end. I spoke to some of my competitors who were also friends who had gotten venture financing. And one friend, he had gotten $1 million for 45% of his company before they even had a prototype. So that was a big valuation, and we had way more sales than they did. Another group of friends are with a company that got $10 million for 25% of that company, so a $40 million valuation, which was based on a multiple of the following year's projected sales. So we put all of that together to come up with something that we could justify. Okay.
And so as who watch the show, they know that Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, made you an offer of $400,000, but for 50%. I got a lot of questions around this, but what was your original reaction when the words came out of his mouth?
I think it was kind of like this. Okay, so anyway, I mean, it was like really, my memory is that we so dismissed it or so discounted it that it was Robert who reminded us that we actually had an offer on the table, and it was like, oh right, that was a real offer. Okay, all right. You know, there's no way we're going to accept a 50% offer. There's no way for 2 reasons. We weren't going to do anything that would get us that close to losing controlling interest. We weren't going to value the company at less than our sales. There was a lot of reasons why it was just such a non-starter. Oh, and it actually happened kind of early on in the process, so we wanted to hear everything else. So it was like, oh, cool, we got something. Let's see what the rest of the universe looks like before we take this another step further. But by and large, it's like practically didn't register at first.
So why do you think he put such a low valuation on the business?
I try not to second guess people very much, but for the fun of it, I think when we watch the show, he likes to come in and make those kind of big equity offers. I think in part just to sort of see where people's heads are. Sometimes he really thinks it's the actual valuation. Sometimes I think he's really just doing it to kind of throw out a line and see how you react. I think, let me say something about Kevin. People think that Mr. Wonderful is sarcastic. I don't. I think that Kevin, if he's on your side, is probably the best guy you could possibly have as your wingman. That guy, you read his autobiography, he will bend over backwards for people that he cares about. And I think the things that he does that people find so offensive are just the bar that he puts up to see if it's worth him spending time with you, because he knows what he can do. And I think the guy's got a really big heart, and he doesn't want to waste it. Which, if you spend a lot of your time, effort, money, and soul on people, and it didn't pan out, it was problematic, you would do the same thing. So I adore that guy, and frankly everyone else that are there. So I think some of it was just kind of testing the water. I think some of it was making good television. I think some of it was some of it was that he actually got that we knew what we were doing and we really could move the company, so he liked the idea of being involved in some way. It was a lot of money, so he had to make sure he was going to get something from it. I think there are a lot of things that went into it. All I can say is I am so grateful that he did it, because it was good television and it was interesting and it was provocative. The Thursday after the show aired, I woke up and I said to Lena, oh wow, I just got something. Some people, the way they saw what happened is that we walked away from almost $500,000. And that's unfathomable to a lot of people. For us, it was just we walked away from a deal that wasn't good. But for some people, it's like you turned down $500,000 or almost $500,000, and I'm tremendously thankful that it created that kind of drama and that kind of a buzz, and it was good.
And so it wasn't difficult to turn down.
No. Well, in fact, we countered it, and people don't get that either. So he said, we came in at 8, he said 50, and he said, make me an offer. And I said, well, I could go to 10, which what most people don't realize is a 20% devaluation. That's going from $5 million to $4 million. It's a big deal. We were willing to go further, but I'm not going to go 8 and then have you say 50 and then say, okay, let's split it down the middle. And that shows that I don't really believe what I'm saying. I mean, I really believe what I was saying. So for me to go to 10 I was tempted just to say, I'll admit, we did a lot of rehearsing in our mind of things that we probably wouldn't say that we would love to say. So it was tempting to go, if I said 8 and he said 50, to go, okay, let's make it 6. Or I was prepared if Mark Cuban made us an offer and we said, let me think about it. If he said, all right, 24-second shot clock, I was prepared to go, oh, we're playing that game? Then time out. So, but going from 8 to 10 was, I didn't get to do it, but 8 to 10 was a big deal, and we were probably willing to go to maybe 15, but I'm not going to jump straight to my final offer. It's called negotiating. Some people said to us, we think you were overvalued. I said, it's negotiating. I'm not going to come in at my final number.
Right. That makes sense. However, we know that from history that most people who go on the show wildly overvalue their company.
Well, that's true, and I didn't think that we wildly overvalued. It was definitely higher than some valuations, but wildly overvalued is you've made $1,000, you have no marketing plan, you haven't proven that there's actually a market there, and you're saying you've got $1 million valuation.
Right. I agree with you.